The note was small, barely larger than a grocery receipt, folded twice and slipped into my hand so quickly that, for a second, I thought I imagined it. My neighbor, Tom, didn't say a word, just gave me that look. The kind of look that makes your stomach clench even before your brain can process why. I almost crumpled it up, ready to toss it in my pocket without a second thought. But something about the way his fingers trembled, the way his eyes darted toward my house, toward my backyard, made me hesitate. I unfolded it. Just 5 words, scrawled in frantic, almost jagged handwriting. Check your shed. My pulse kicked up a notch. A joke? Some stupid prank? But Tom wasn't the prankster type. He was a quiet guy, the kind who barely waved when we took out the trash at the same time. If he was slipping me notes in broad daylight, something was seriously off. I forced a laugh, tried to shake it off, but the back of my neck prickled as I glanced toward the shed. It sat at the far end of my yard, half hidden by an old oak tree. I had built that shed myself, years ago. A place for tools, camping gear, winter tires, nothing worth a mysterious warning. And yet, my hands felt clammy as I rubbed my thumb over the ink. For a full minute, I stood frozen, my mind spinning with possibilities I didn't want to consider. Maybe it was some sort of mistake. Maybe Tom was losing it. Maybe. Footsteps. Soft. Light. Coming from the house. I turned my head slightly and caught a glimpse of her through the kitchen window, my wife. She was washing dishes, her back to me, completely unaware that I was standing in the yard, gripping a crumpled piece of paper like my life depended on it. For some reason, that made my stomach twist even harder. I took a slow breath, turned toward the shed, and forced my feet to move. Each step felt heavier than the last. The lock was still in place, same as always. No signs of forced entry, no scratches, no broken hasp. Everything looked perfectly normal. So why the hell was I sweating? I reached into my pocket, pulled out my keyring. The familiar jingle sounded unnatural in the silence. My fingers fumbled slightly as I slid the key into the padlock. It stuck for half a second before turning with a click. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the handle. My brain screamed at me to stop, to turn around, to forget I ever saw the note. Instead, I pulled the door open. The moment I saw what was inside, my entire world cracked apart. The door swung open with a slow, agonizing creak, the kind that sounded almost cinematic, like the universe itself wanted to drag out the moment, to give me a few extra seconds before my life changed forever. At first, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. It was like walking into my own house and suddenly finding a stranger's furniture inside. The air smelled different, wrong. Not like old wood and dust and motor oil. There was something else, something familiar yet completely out of place. Perfume. My wife's perfume. The expensive one she only wore on special occasions. The scent hit me like a slap, and my stomach flipped. That was when I noticed the clothes. Folded neatly on the old wooden workbench I used for small repairs, a pile of her clothes. A silky red blouse. A pair of black leggings. One of those lacy bras she always complained was too uncomfortable, but somehow ended up missing months ago. I took a step closer, heart pounding. Why the hell were her clothes in my shed? Then I saw the bag. A small leather tote, tucked into the shadows beneath the bench. I reached for it with shaky hands, half expecting it to vanish, as if this whole thing were some kind of fever dream. But it was real. Too real. I pulled it out, unzipped the top. Inside, a burner phone. A cheap, black flip phone. The kind you buy with cash and throw away when you're done with it. The kind that has only one purpose. A sour taste crept into my mouth as I picked it up, my thumb hesitating over the power button. I already knew what I would find inside, but my body moved on autopilot. Click. The screen lit up with a dull, blue glow. The message inbox was almost empty. Almost. One text. From an unsaved number. Same time tomorrow? My vision blurred, and for a second, the whole shed seemed to tilt. I staggered back, nearly knocking over a shelf, my brain desperately trying to stitch together a rational explanation, something, anything, that could make this make sense. But there was only one answer. She had been here. Recently. This wasn't some long-forgotten stash of old things. This was active. This was happening. And that wasn't even the worst part. My gut clenched as I noticed something else, something that made my skin crawl with a kind of horror I couldn't explain. A folded blanket in the corner. One of those thick, fleece picnic blankets, spread out just enough to suggest it had been used. I couldn't breathe. The shed, the space I built, my space, had been turned into something else. Something filthy. I staggered backward, bumping into the doorframe, my mind spinning so fast it felt like I was standing in the eye of a tornado. Who had been here? Who was she meeting in my shed? And more importantly, how long had she been doing this? A sound escaped my throat, somewhere between a laugh and a choked gasp. I felt sick, like I could throw up right there on the floor. But then, something cold and sharp sliced through the swirling storm of rage and betrayal. A single thought. Don't react. Not yet. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to steady my shaking hands. I couldn't let her know I found this. Not until I was ready. Slowly, methodically, I put everything back exactly as I had found it. The bag, the phone, the clothes, all placed with meticulous precision, like I had never been here at all. Then, I turned, stepped out into the evening air, and locked the shed behind me with steady hands. My heartbeat pounded in my ears as I walked back toward the house, feeling like a ghost in my own life. She had no idea that I knew, and that was the only advantage I had. I walked back into the house as if nothing had happened, as if my world hadn't just shattered into a million sharp, jagged pieces, as if I hadn't just seen proof, undeniable, physical proof, that my wife had been sneaking around behind my back. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat and forced myself to breathe. One step at a time, 1 second at a time. Don't give anything away. The kitchen was warm, filled with the scent of garlic and butter. She was standing by the stove, stirring something in a pan, humming softly to herself like she didn't have a goddamn care in the world. "Hey, you're back," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "I was just about to call you in for dinner." I stared at her for a beat too long, my brain struggling to reconcile the woman in front of me, the woman I had trusted, built a life with the woman who had a second phone hidden in my shed, the woman who had laid out a blanket like she was setting up a goddamn romantic getaway inside the place I built with my own hands. My fingers curled into a fist at my side, but I forced a smile. Fake. Easy. Controlled. "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice even. "I was just outside for a bit." "Long day," she smiled, turning back to the stove. "Well, dinner's almost ready. You hungry?" I should have said no. I should have walked out right then and there, slammed the door behind me, and let her deal with the wreckage of her own betrayal. But I didn't, because this wasn't the time. I pulled out a chair at the kitchen table and sat down, watching her move, studying her the way a hunter studies prey. For the first time in our marriage, I realized something. She wasn't my wife anymore. She was the enemy, and I wasn't going to just confront her. I wasn't going to let her cry her way out of this, throw out some half-assed excuse, promise to fix things while secretly planning her next move. No, I was going to destroy her. That night, I lay beside her in bed, staring at the ceiling while she scrolled through her phone, completely unaware of the storm brewing beside her. My mind was a battlefield, rage, pain, humiliation, cold, calculated strategy. Who had she been texting? How long had this been going on? How deep did this go? I needed answers. But more than that, I needed proof. By the next morning, I had a plan. First, I played dumb. Act normal. Keep the routine. Let her think she was in control. Then, I started watching. She had no idea that while she kissed me goodbye, I was memorizing the exact moment she left the house. That I was timing how long it took her to respond to texts. That I was checking our shared phone plan online to see who she was calling when I wasn't around. She had no idea that while she laughed at something on her phone, I was standing behind her, noting the slight tilt of the screen. She always angled it just enough to keep it out of my line of sight. She had no idea that when she ran errands, I started tracking her mileage, checking the gas in her car, noting when things didn't add up. And most importantly, she had no idea that while she slept soundly beside me, her phone sitting innocently on the nightstand, I had already started digging into what she was really hiding. By the end of the week, I knew 3 things for certain. She was careful, but not careful enough. Whoever she was meeting, she had done this before. She thought she was untouchable. She had no idea that every move she made, every text she sent, every fake excuse she fed me was just fuel for the fire I was about to unleash. She thought she was winning. She had no idea she was walking straight into a trap. I was done being the fool. I moved with precision, like a ghost in my own life, silent, unseen, collecting every piece of evidence I needed to burn her world to the ground. The first thing I did was order the cameras. Tiny, undetectable, motion activated. One inside the shed, one outside facing the door, another near the driveway. A fourth one inside the house, carefully positioned in the living room, the one place I never thought I'd need to monitor. Setting them up was easier than I thought. She had no clue. Why would she? In her mind, I was still her idiot husband, the one she had been deceiving for God knows how long. While I waited for the cameras to start feeding me her secrets, I dug deeper. Phone records. I logged into our shared mobile plan and scrolled through the call history. Numbers I didn't recognize. Late-night calls. Short bursts of text at odd hours. The same numbers appearing again and again. I plugged them into a reverse lookup site. And then a name. A name I recognized. My chest went ice cold. I felt my own breath leave me, like someone had sucker-punched the air out of my lungs. I knew this man. Not a stranger. Not some random guy. I clenched my fists, trying to suppress the rage boiling under my skin. Not yet. Not now. I wasn't ready to face it, not without more. So I kept digging, tracking her car. She had a routine. Always careful, always calculated. She left for work, ran errands, came home at the same time every day, except when she didn't. And on those days, I started tracking her mileage. Her gas tank should have lasted longer. But it didn't. So I did what any man would do in my situation. I followed her. She wasn't meeting him at hotels or restaurants. Too risky. She was meeting him somewhere much closer. Too close. One day, when she told me she was grabbing groceries, I tailed her from a distance. She drove right past the grocery store. Instead, she pulled into a quiet cul-de-sac and parked right in front of his house. That night, I hired a private investigator. I wanted the whole story, start to finish. I wanted timestamps, photos, video proof. I wanted their meetings documented, their patterns exposed. And what I found out made me physically sick. She had been doing this for years. Not months. Not weeks. Years. While I worked, while I planned vacations, while I kissed her goodnight, this had been happening right under my nose. But the worst part? The one thing that almost broke me? One of their meetings happened in my house. Our home. I stared at the investigator's report, at the damning evidence laid out in front of me, and felt something inside me snap. She brought him here. Into my space. Into our bedroom. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. She had no idea what was coming. She had played her game. Now, it was my turn. I needed to catch her in the act. Not just texts, not just suspicious calls. I needed undeniable, inescapable proof. And I knew exactly how to get it. One evening, while we were having dinner, me watching her pretending to be the devoted wife, I set the bait. Hey, I said casually between bites of steak. I might have to head out of town for a couple of nights. Work trip. Short notice. Her fork paused, just for a fraction of a second, before she recovered. Oh, where to? She asked, like she actually cared. Denver. Some client meetings. Shouldn't be more than a day or two. She nodded, chewing her food slowly. That's too bad. But I guess it's important, huh? I watched her carefully. She was trying too hard to sound indifferent. I knew what she was thinking. The second I left, she'd be free. She had no idea that I wasn't going anywhere. The night before my trip, I packed a suitcase, tossed it in my trunk, and left early in the morning, making sure to say goodbye like any trusting husband would. She kissed me on the cheek. Call me when you land. I smiled, knowing damn well I'd be watching instead. Instead of heading to the airport, I parked in a secluded lot a few miles away, out of sight. I had already set everything up, the hidden cameras, the audio feed. Every movement in and around the house was being streamed directly to my laptop. Now, all I had to do was wait. She didn't waste time. By noon, she was on the phone. I listened as her voice went soft, playful. The voice she used on me when we first met, back when I actually meant something to her. He's gone, baby. The words hit like a bullet. I gripped the steering wheel, forcing myself to breathe, to stay calm. I had known this was coming, but hearing it? That was different. An hour later, he showed up. The man who had been screwing my wife behind my back. The man I knew. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached as I watched him waltz up my driveway, as if he belonged here. As if this was his house. She greeted him at the door, all smiles. No guilt. No hesitation. Then, hand in hand, they walked toward the shed. I switched to the shed camera feed. The door creaked open. They stepped inside. The bastard laughed. I still can't believe he hasn't figured it out. She giggled. Giggled. Like some lovesick teenager. I told you. He's too busy with work, she whispered. He doesn't pay attention. Every muscle in my body locked up. Oh, I was paying attention now. I watched as she wrapped her arms around him, as they kissed, right there, in my shed. My shed. My house. My wife. And then, she said something that made my blood turn to ice. I think I'm gonna leave him soon. He hummed, running his hand down her back. Yeah. She sighed, nuzzling into his chest. Yeah. Just need to make sure I get my share of everything first. The house, the accounts. I mean, after all these years, I deserve something out of it, right? She was planning to take everything. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a setup. She wasn't just cheating. She was trying to bleed me dry. I stared at the screen, at the image of the woman I once loved, and felt nothing. No heartbreak. No sadness. Just a slow, cold burn. Because at that moment, I realized she had already lost. She just didn't know it yet. I walked into the lawyer's office carrying her funeral. Not her literal one. No, that would be too easy. This was something worse. This was the slow, meticulous dissection of everything she thought she had secured. The receptionist barely glanced up as I stepped inside, my folder clutched in one hand. It was stuffed to the brim, screenshots, call logs, surveillance footage, financial records, GPS locations. Everything I needed to turn the love of my life into nothing more than a cautionary tale. Do you have an appointment? She asked without looking away from her monitor. I do, I said. My voice sounded unervingly calm, even to me. A few minutes later, I was sitting across from Jason Miller. This guy wasn't just a divorce lawyer. He was a shark. The kind of man you hired when you weren't looking for a fair fight. Jason leaned back in his chair, looking me over like he'd already seen 1,000 versions of me before. Men who walked in broken, humiliated. Men who found out too late that their marriage had been a goddamn joke. What have you got? He asked, resting his elbows on the desk. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into my folder and pulled out the first stack of evidence. I slid it across the desk. He picked it up, flipping through the pages. Call logs. Text records. Financial statements. His brow lifted slightly, but he didn't say a word. Then, I pulled out the second stack. Screenshots from the hidden cameras. Pictures of her and her lover, his hands on her, her lips on him. Time-stamped, crystal clear. Jason let out a low whistle. Damn, I didn't react. I wasn't here for sympathy. And then, I pulled out the final stack. The recording transcripts. Every disgusting word they exchanged in that shed. The part where she admitted she was planning to take half of everything. The part where she said she had me wrapped around her finger. Jason read for about 30 seconds before grinning. Oh, this is airtight, he said, shaking his head. He tossed the papers onto his desk and leaned forward. She won't see it coming. Good. I didn't just want a divorce. I wanted her ruined. Jason wasted no time laying out the strategy. Step 1. Divorce papers, served at the worst possible moment. Step 2. Complete financial lockdown. Freezing joint accounts before she had a chance to move a single cent. No alimony. No settlement. Nothing. Step 3. The courtroom ambush. A carefully orchestrated legal attack that would strip her of everything. By the time we were done, she wouldn't just lose her husband. She'd lose her home, her stability, and her reputation. And the best part? She had no clue. That night, when I walked through the front door, she greeted me with a kiss. I kissed her back. She had no idea that I had just signed the paperwork that would turn her life to ash. She started noticing the shift before she even understood what it was. It was subtle at first, small things that her lizard brain probably registered before she consciously did. The way I didn't ask where she was going when she grabbed her keys. The way I didn't react when she sent a quick text and flipped her phone over, like she always did. She'd gotten too comfortable with the game, too used to the version of me who never questioned, never doubted, never looked too closely. But now, she was playing against a man who had already won. The first time she tested the waters was over breakfast. I was sipping my coffee, reading the paper, just like always. She was scrolling through her phone, pretending to check emails, but really texting him. I could see it in the way her fingers moved, fast, deliberate. "Hey," she said, looking up. "You've been different lately." I took another sip of coffee, perfectly measured. "How so?" She studied me, tilting her head slightly. "I don't know. You're just quiet." I smiled, casual, easy. The same smile I gave her on our wedding day. The same smile she fell for. The same one she thought meant I was still blind. "Not at all," I said, setting my mug down. "Work's just been keeping me busy." She hesitated. She didn't believe me, but she wanted to. So she nodded, forcing a smile of her own, and went back to her phone. "Good. Keep doubting. Keep wondering." She had no idea that in exactly 6 days, she'd be standing in a courtroom, watching her entire life go up in flames. Over the next few days, I could feel her unraveling. I would catch her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking. A crease between her brows. That flicker of doubt in her eyes. She started testing me. One evening, she came up behind me in the kitchen, slid her arms around my waist. A rare display of affection, too rare to be genuine. "Hey, baby," she purred. "I feel like we haven't spent much time together lately." I turned, kissed her forehead. "We should plan something soon." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She knew something was wrong. She just didn't know what. Not yet. The night before the court date, I lay in bed beside her, listening to her breathe. Tomorrow, she'd wake up thinking it was just another day. She'd sip her coffee, send her texts, plan another meeting with her lover. But by noon, she'd be standing in front of a judge. By 1 o'clock, she'd realize she wasn't getting a cent. And by 3, she'd be walking out of that courthouse with nothing. She stirred in her sleep, shifting closer, her arm draping over my chest. I didn't move. She had no idea she was holding on to a man who had already let go. She walked into that courtroom like she had already won. Dressed in soft neutrals, hair done just right, subtle, not too polished, but enough to sell the image of a wronged woman. The kind who expected sympathy, who thought she was about to play me like a fool one last time. I sat at my table, calm, unshaken. Jason, my lawyer, barely looked up from his notes. We both knew how this was going to end. Her eyes landed on me, and for a fraction of a second, I saw it, hesitation. Maybe it was because I wasn't looking at her with anger. I wasn't glaring. I wasn't breaking down. I was waiting. Her brows knitted together, but before she could say anything, the bailiff called us forward. The judge entered. The room settled, and the show began. She still thought this was a standard divorce hearing, that she was about to walk away with half of everything, that, despite whatever problems we had, she'd still come out on top. I didn't correct her. I let her believe it, right up until Jason stood up, cleared his throat, and said, "Your Honor, we'd like to submit new evidence before proceeding." That was the moment she felt it. The shift. Her whole body went rigid, fingers curling slightly around the edge of the table. "What?" she whispered under her breath. The judge glanced at Jason. "Proceed." And then, I watched her world collapse in real time. The first stack of documents was handed over. Bank statements, call logs, text records. She went pale as the judge flipped through them. The secret phone, the late-night calls, the meetings. Her head snapped toward me, eyes wide. "What is this?" I didn't answer. Jason slid over the next file. Surveillance footage. Screenshots from the hidden cameras. Her lover. In my shed. In my house. She looked at the images, blinking fast, like if she did it enough, they'd disappear. The courtroom was silent. Then, the judge spoke. "Mrs. Reynolds, do you have a response to these allegations?" Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. This isn't what it looks like," she stammered. Jason leaned forward. "Which part? The part where you admitted on tape that you were planning to take half of your husband's assets? Or the part where you said you thought he was too stupid to ever find out?" Her breath hitched. Her lawyer was already flipping through the evidence, face drained of color. This has to be a violation of privacy, she blurted, grasping at straws. The judge didn't even blink. Your husband installed cameras on his property. That is well within his legal rights. She turned to me then, desperate. Please, she whispered, voice breaking. We can talk about this. This doesn't have to. I tilted my head, studying her. She still didn't get it. This wasn't me doing this to her. She did this to herself. When the judge finally spoke again, the gavel might as well have been the final nail in her coffin. Divorce granted. No alimony. No settlement. The house? Mine. The joint accounts? Locked. Her jaw trembled, her hands clutching the table so tightly her knuckles went white. And for the first time, I saw it in her eyes, true, unfiltered fear. She came in expecting a simple divorce. Instead, she walked into her own execution. I watched the light leave her eyes. At first, she had tried to fight it. Her back was straight, her lips pressed into a tight, angry line. She kept shaking her head, muttering things to her lawyer, as if any of it mattered. As if there was still a way out. But the more the judge read, the more Jason laid out in brutal, calculated precision, the secret phone, the money she had siphoned into a hidden account, the recorded conversations where she laughed about how she was going to take me for everything. The more I saw the shift. The moment she realized this wasn't just a divorce. This was destruction. Her hands started trembling first. Then, her breathing became shallow. She swallowed hard, glanced at the judge, then at me, as if I might somehow save her. She still thought she could fix it. She had spent so long manipulating, gaslighting, lying through her teeth, that even now she thought she could talk her way out of it. So she leaned in, lowering her voice like it was just the two of us. Please, she whispered. We can fix this. We don't have to do this here. Fix it? I almost laughed. Instead, I just stared at her. No anger. No hate. Just cold, calculating silence. Her breathing hitched. She was finally seeing me. Not as the fool she thought she had married. Not as the man she had been slowly, methodically gutting over the years. She was seeing the man who had already won. Her hand reached for mine. Instinct, maybe muscle memory from years of faking affection. I didn't move. Didn't even flinch. And that's when it happened. She broke. Right there, in front of the judge, in front of our lawyers, in front of everyone, she shattered. Her lips quivered, eyes darting wildly. Your Honor, this isn't fair, she choked out. This is an ambush. The judge sighed. Mrs. Reynolds, the evidence speaks for itself. She shook her head furiously, hands shaking. But we were married for years. I deserve. Jason didn't even look up from his notes. You deserve nothing. Her breath hitched. The gavel hit. Finalized. No alimony. No settlement. No access to our accounts. Everything she thought she had secured? Gone. She turned to me one last time, desperate now. Please, she whispered. I stood, buttoning my jacket. Didn't say a word. Didn't even look back. She had spent years dismantling our marriage, piece by piece. I had dismantled her in an afternoon. She sat there, hollow-eyed, barely breathing, her hands gripping the table like it was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. The gavel had already come down. The decision was final. She had lost everything. But she didn't know just how deep the knife would go. I waited. Let her marinate in her own humiliation. Let her think this was as bad as it could get. Then, I leaned in. Just enough for her to hear. Check the evidence again. Her brows furrowed, confusion flickering behind the devastation in her eyes. Jason, my lawyer, slid one last document across the table toward her attorney. A simple stack of paper. Harmless looking. But it wasn't. Her lawyer hesitated. Then he picked it up. Started flipping through it. And his face went ghost white. She noticed. Sat up straighter. What? What is it? Her lawyer didn't answer right away. Just slowly turned to her, eyes wide, like he'd just seen her execution order. Did you sign this? He finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. Her fingers twitched. I don't know. What is it? Jason smiled. Cold. Amused. Lethal. It's a post-nuptial agreement, he said smoothly. You signed it 6 years ago. Her mouth parted, but no sound came out. She blinked rapidly, her brain working overtime, trying to remember. And then, I saw it. The exact second she realized. I could almost hear the moment the memory clicked in her head. The agreement had been slipped in casually years ago, before the affair. Before she thought she could outsmart me. I had made it seem like a routine estate document. A simple formality. And she had signed it, without reading it. Because back then, she thought I was the same clueless idiot she could manipulate. But she wasn't just signing a piece of paper. She was signing away her right to everything. Her voice wavered. No, that's not real. Jason chuckled. Oh, it's real. And legally binding. Her lawyer was flipping through the pages so fast it looked like he was trying to erase reality. This means she gets no spousal support, no financial claims, no assets, no. His voice trailed off. He swallowed hard. She turned to me, pure terror in her eyes now. You planned this. I just stared at her. Let her sit with that. Let her understand she was never in control. She thought she had played me for a fool, but in the end, she was the one who signed her own death warrant. She sucked in a breath, shaky, panicked. This can't be legal. The judge barely even looked up. It's perfectly legal. Her hands trembled. But I didn't know. Jason closed the folder with a satisfying snap. Well, he said, standing. You do now. I stood too, buttoned my jacket. Looked down at the woman who once thought she had me wrapped around her finger. She wasn't crying yet. Not yet. But I knew she would be. Because for the first time since this started, she understood. This wasn't just a divorce. This was a total, calculated annihilation. And I walked away with everything. She was still sitting there, frozen, ruined. Her lawyer was whispering furiously in her ear, but she wasn't listening. She couldn't. She just kept shaking her head, blinking like she was trying to wake up from a nightmare she never saw coming. Her hands trembled as she reached for me, her voice cracking. Please. That was all she could manage. Just that one pathetic word. Please. I didn't stop. Didn't hesitate. Didn't even acknowledge the woman who had spent years tearing me apart piece by piece. I just walked right past her, through the double doors, into the crisp afternoon air, a free man. I didn't look back. The fallout came fast. The house. Gone. She had to pack up and leave before the month was out. The money? Frozen. She had no access to our joint accounts, no assets of her own. Her perfect little life? Over. And the best part? Her lover vanished. The second she walked out of that courthouse with nothing, he ghosted her. Blocked her number. Disappeared. Because, of course, he did. Men like that don't stick around when the game stops being fun. She had thrown away her marriage, her security, her entire future for a man who never planned to catch her when she fell. And now, she was falling alone. I heard from mutual friends that she tried to spin the story, tried to paint me as the villain. But it didn't work. People talk. And when the truth came out, the affair, the recordings, the betrayal so deep it turned her own home into a crime scene, no one looked at her the same way again. She became a joke, a cautionary tale. She went from hosting dinner parties to crashing on her sister's couch, from buying designer bags to selling jewelry just to scrape by, from laughing behind my back to crying in public, humiliated and alone. I never reached out, never responded to the late-night texts, the weak apologies, the desperate attempts to make me acknowledge her existence. She was nothing to me, just a name I used to know. And as I stood outside that courthouse, taking a deep breath of the cold, fresh air, I felt it for the first time in years. Freedom. Weeks passed. Life moved forward. Mine, at least. Hers? Not so much. I heard through the grapevine that she was struggling, hopping between temp jobs, burning through whatever savings she had left. She wasn't built for this, for survival. She was built for comfort, for luxury. And now, she had nothing. That should have been the end of it. But, of course, she couldn't let it go. The message came late one evening. A single text. Can we talk? No apology. No explanation. Just that. She must have sat there, staring at the screen, waiting, hoping I'd bite. That I'd give her one last chance to crawl back, to spin some new lie, to try and scrape together some pathetic excuse for what she did. I didn't even open it. I just deleted it. That night, I sat in my backyard, beer in hand, staring at the shed. It was empty now. Clean. Nothing left inside but cold wood and silence. No hidden phones. No secret meetings. No lies. just a space that finally belonged to me again. I took a slow sip, let the cool night air settle over me, and leaned back in my chair. For the first time in years, I was at peace. I didn't need revenge, didn't need closure. I had already won. Fade to black.